Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Back at it again with another episode of the BMB. This is your boy Malik Washington coming to you live with another video. How's everyone doing this fine day or evening, wherever you all reside? Pray that all is well with you all and more success and fortune, if that is to be your fate. And pray for strength, courage, and resilience for those of you whose fate might be more so within the realm of adversity and struggle. Hopefully you can come out of that soon, or if there is a trial that needs to be learned from you, hopefully you will learn your lesson soon, whatever that may be in life. Ladies and gentlemen, as I told you in the previous video that it wasn't going to be over tonight, I have one last video for you all before I depart and go and take my butt or my tail to sleep, because I got to get up in the morning and get ready for work. But nonetheless, tonight's episode is going to be very important, and I just want to throw this little disclaimer out there as well. For those of you who are relatively old and not so new, you all are aware that this channel was derived from the old label, Off the Dome Exclusives. What a name, right? Off the Dome. Nevertheless, it was a derivative of that, and what was the focal point of the channel was the spiritual aspect of my life, where I granted or I guess you could say I bequeathed my wisdom and shared some of my wisdom with you all, with a lot of things that I had actually self-actualized and was more so self-taught and self-learned about a lot of things, because I've always had an active imagination, consistently asked questions nobody would ask. I've always been the kind of person who has like a streamer brain. I have a tendency to have a stream of ideas that tend to just come in, and then I vocalize them a lot. And so could say to a degree I was a bit of a weirdo. I wasn't really a kid. I was always in like a mature state, trying to figure out life. And like my grandmother would say, when I was a baby, I used to read the dictionary and try to look at different words. And even though I didn't know what the context it was or the definition, I looked at them anyway, because I was interested in the definition in the book more so than I was going outside to play with the kids. That was just the way I was. And as you can all clearly see, I'm very scholastic. I like to talk about history. I like to talk about the scriptures, because naturally I was raised up on it. I could talk about other books as well, but my foundation is scripture. I like to talk about life and figure out life. Thus is why I have a lot of knowledge on adages and proverbs and things like figurative language, parabolic language. I like to decipher and decode things, try to figure people out. I have a tendency to study people too. Even sometimes when they're not looking, I'm studying them to try to figure out what their pattern is, their behavioral pattern, their psychological pattern, what makes them tick, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, those sorts of things. So, without treading on people's, dark histories and whatnot, I just try to figure out the ways of the world. And I've always been like that. And on this channel, I try to share that wisdom with you all, albeit I'm a young man. I'm only 25 years old. I got 85 years to go. So I'm like a quarter of a way there. But I'm not there yet, if that, to 100 years old. But I've been told that I have an old soul. Some would argue I'm down to earth. Some would say that I'm zealous or passionate about the things that I believe in and the things that I know. Some called me a pastor, a preacher. I'm nowhere near a pastor or a preacher. I don't want to be that. Although I might come across as one because of the way that I speak and the passion that I have about certain things, especially about the scriptures. You all who are my friends and my buddies, y'all know how I roll with that. I get down when it comes to scripture. And it's simply because I took it upon myself to try to learn the scriptures, not so much in a novel way, not so much as just merely a piece of literature, but as something that a culture once took and utilized as a lifestyle to try to achieve a certain kind of godlyhood, a state of righteousness, which was on par with what their God was seeking. which I deem to be a relatively accurate book that portrays the realities of life, the struggles of life. It doesn't downplay on what goes on. Now, it doesn't tell everything that we want to know, like how many, like the dinosaurs. It might not talk about the stars. It may not get so in depth into the mathematical equations, and it might not use the logic and reasoning some agnostics and atheists seek after when they're trying to figure out and hypothesize whether something is true or false in nature. But the scriptures emphasizes goodness, evil, right and wrong, logic and reasoning as it pertains to law and culture, and moreover emphasizing how the hierarchy of godlyhood as well as family matters. Perhaps that is the one thing that we don't often talk about enough. It is also the one thing that both this country as well as some places in the world are missing, and is ultimately the reason why a lot of us are paying the prices that we're paying, because we're giving away common values for selfish gain, selfish profit, and things of that nature. But ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right on into the topic at hand. For that little short monologue, we're going to leave that alone. Today's discussion, today's episode, today's podcast, we're talking about this mystery, or what we believe to be a mystery. Had different views on it. Theologians have had different views on it. Scholars have had different views on it. Various religions have had different views on it. I have my own view on it. And perhaps there are people out there who have similar sentiments as I do, in contrast to other points of views that are out there about this. And as I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there's no excuse. If you don't like to hear about the Bible, or you're not religious, or you don't believe in this kind of stuff, you are welcome to leave. You are welcome to not watch this. You can pause it and go about your business. Like I said, I talk about a little bit of everything on this channel, but what will always and forever remain is the scriptures. The scriptures will always come first. So if you don't want to learn anything new, and you don't want to get into all of this, you could say troglodyte material, you don't have to. Okay? This isn't for you. If this doesn't roll with your spirit, I understand. I'm not forcing you to listen to me. I welcome anyone who is different from me who wishes to listen, however. So come and listen and be humble if you don't know what's going to be talked about. But if you don't want to talk about it, if you don't want to ask questions, legitimate questions though, and what I mean by legitimate questions, questions that are actually out of curiosity, not out of the fact because you want to be a jackass or an asshole, or because you already have this, let's say, preconceived notion in the back of your head of how you already feel about scripture, or how you feel about people's dispositions on these arguments. That's your thing. You can go about your business, because you're wasting time here. It's not going to work with me, because you can leave. But if you legitimately want to learn, and you legitimately want to have a discussion, or if you legitimately just want to listen and just see what I have to say, by all means, everyone is welcome. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. But nonetheless, what we were talking about is everybody has their view of how they feel about the mark of the beast. We've all heard about the mark of the beast. It's the mark that is discussed in the book of Revelations chapter 7, when John the disciple was on the island of Patmos. Matter of fact, I believe John was imprisoned, if I'm not mistaken. Nevertheless, he had these revelations that was unveiled to him by the Creator himself, or you could say theophanies of the Creator, who appeared to him and expressed to him in various symbols what would happen during the end of the age. Some people call it the end of days. Some people call it Armageddon. Some people call it doomsday. Whatever you want to use, by all means. But as a disclaimer, the world is not going to end. Okay? Not the world. Perhaps the age. Perhaps kingdoms. Perhaps the downfall of kingdoms. But not the world itself, Earth. Earth is going to be here. Remember, the dinosaurs went extinct too, remember? Millions of years ago, so they say, during the Cambrian explosion, but Earth still remained. So if which is still technically a theory, but they say that they're drawing closer to, reasons as to why these things happen. There could have been multiple factors why the dinosaurs went extinct. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that the Earth exists. And then in that same sense, even when World War III happens, if it's meant to happen, Earth is still going to be here. Earth has a tendency to heal itself. It's a mother planet. It's a planet that inhabits life. So long as it has its natural properties, it's going to continue to exist. So when you hear things like Armageddon, Doomsday, that's not what that's about, right? The Bible does not preach that. The Earth will still be here. What the Bible does preach is about the end of man's reign, the end of man's time of ruling, right? The end of corruption, the age of corruption, the age of which man is doing whatever they want to do and committing all kinds of sins beyond repair unto the heavens, that sort of thing. That is going to end. And when Yeshua returns, who you all call Jesus Christ, this man is supposed to return with an iron scepter, and he shall rule over the nations, as is imposed by the book of Revelations. But more specifically, we're talking about the mark of the beast. And many people have various theories and hypotheses on what they believe the mark of the beast to be. Some argue that the mark of the beast is physical. Some argue that the mark of the beast is more, you could say, figurative. Some believe it could be a little bit of both. But depending on who you ask, you will get various responses. But the most common response, the most, you could say, consensus of a response that you would hear about the mark of the beast is that the mark of the beast is a symbol that will be marked on both your forehead as well as this guy right here, your right hand. And it will come in the form of a symbol or mark of which will be placed as a way to brand you as someone who is of the beast, right? That belongs to the beast. Now, if we're looking at this from the physical standpoint, some people argue it is the modern so-called RFID chip. For those of you that don't know what the RFID chip is, which I'm sure millions of you do, but for those of you who do not, the RFID chip is a microchip. It's the size of a grain of rice. And apparently it has the ability to, it's almost like a digital, it's like a microchip version of a barcode. It's almost like your social security number. It has the ability to track you. It has the ability to know what your temperature is, whether if you're having high fever or low fever. It has the ability to be able to keep track of your information electronically. So banking information, DNA. I'm assuming DNA, that there could be that aspect of it too. But basically, it has all of your bio information within it, right? It tracks all of that. How they do it, I believe there's some kind of software that maybe perhaps the company that made it keeps. And basically, they're able to do all these different things. It is also believed that this is going to be utilized as the new form of e-currency when the dollar goes out. The RFID chip is going to be the new optional, possibly mandatory mandatory approach to paying for things when you're getting ready to buy and sell, such as go to the store, go to the grocery store, go to a retail store, anywhere, you name it. It will become the new way to participate in the economy. And people believe that, according to which there's a specific verse in Revelation 7 that talks about how the people who take the mark will be able to buy and sell. For those who reject it, they won't be able to do these things, right? So there's some form of implementation from this mark. And this mark has the ability to somehow prevent people from being able to live common lives, which seems to suggest some sort of, you could say, doomsday tactic, which could be to starve the people, put people in malnutritious situations, that if you don't comply with the new rules at hand, If you don't accept the mark of the beast, you will not be able to have these privileges that the mark will be able to grant you if you do. Take, for instance, the vaccine for COVID-19. If a person didn't take the COVID-19 vaccine, it is highly suggested that you do. But if you don't, then a lot of countries won't even allow you into their borders. Some even say you have to have what's known as a Vax Pass, right? And the Vax Pass will indicate that, well, that you basically you either got 1 or 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. It gives you that mobility to be able to go from one country to the next. And that's about as much significance and value that those passes really have. Nothing else. So unless you're a wanderlust and you believe in traveling the world and wanting to see certain countries, now not all of them are this way, only some of them are. Some of them require you to have a Vax Pass. But if you don't have it, then you cannot enter their borders. You will have to stay here in America. And even some companies, some jobs, in fact, if you don't, take the vaccine, especially if you're working in hospitals or you're working around a lot of people, they require that you take the vaccine because you're going to be dealing with a lot of sickly people. And more than likely, you won't even be able to get the job, even though you might have a PhD in things related to phlebotomy or neurology, you name it. But these are things they require from you. And if they can't get that, then you can't participate in the benefits and the perks that they will allow you to have if you have it. Similar to the mark of the beast, this is what is implied when we think about a mark. But that's from the modern day sense. And you all know me. I don't like to look at things from the modern day sense simply because the Bible is ancient. It's antique. It's an ancient literature. It's a culture who wrote this. And again, when you look at things from a religious or dogmatic standpoint, what tends to happen is that a lot of the messaging in the Bible, especially in the New Testament, and this happens a lot, it gets diluted. It gets diluted with a lot of Gentile hogwash, as I would like to say. So what do I mean by this? People who are not privy to biblical parabolic language or figurative language, who are not familiar with the Hebrew language, and not to say you have to be some expert in Hebrew or even Koine Greek to be able to understand these things. We have resources for this, right? Where you can go and look up certain words and see where they syntactically derive from, what language they derive from, what certain terms mean, and they have multiple meanings, not just one. Some of them have direct, singular meaning. Some have pluralized forms, like the word love. Love is not just encompassed of, oh, let me hug you and kiss you and everything like that, like the modern world would believe, or the arbitrary word, I love you. Sometimes love is also encompassed of representing something that is actionable, something that you can actually show to people in order to show that you are appreciative of them. You're appreciative of their presence. Some people show love as an act of, you could say, by means of giving gifts. But this is just a representation of how malleable the form of love is. Right? And the same thing goes for when we talk about the mark of the beast. Now, the mark of the beast that is specifically implied in the book of Revelations is the mark. It's marked in 3 numbers, 3 6s. It's the number of a man. And this man apparently rides a beast. And this beast holds the mark, which is 666. This number, the beast will go around and he will mark everyone with who is under his name, under his tutelage, right? Now, the first question we have to dare ask is, what is a mark? When you go back into the Old Testament, a mark bears to be a sign or a type of brand, a type of branding. Now, one may ask, well, how did they mark someone back in the day? Well, remember back in chattel slavery, they used to take like these hot iron brands, and the master would sometimes, I guess not even sometimes, but he would basically brand his slaves with his name, either with his name or his brand, the brand of his family, right? Their little insignia. It would be a representation that this slave belongs to this specific master. Back in the day, they did something somewhat similar. Some tribes had been known in the ancient Near East to, they did a lot of cutting of the skin, but the Israelites didn't do nothing like that. They didn't mar their face or anything like that. Egyptians did, but not the Israelites. The Israelites, I think they took, like, similar to what happened with slaves. They took hot irons and they kind of just like pressed it upon their servants, right? Their indentured servants. And that's how they would be marked. Now, specifically, that's just one way that a mark was represented. Another way a mark could be represented is as a sign, right? So take, for instance, like the Sabbath. The Sabbath for the Israelites was a sign that they were separate from the nations. The Sabbath specifically was a practice that was allocated to the Israelites and sojourners who follow the God of Israel, that believed in the completion of the 7 days, that God had created the earth, or shall I say, God made creation within a 7-day period. But at the 7th day, hypothetically, God rested on the 7th day, considerably to be Saturday. Now, Christians will take it, if they believe in Sabbath, they believe in Sunday. Although I disagree with that day, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that Saturday was considered to be the Sabbath day. And they would take that day as a day of rest from all their physical rest, right? All physical labors. So anything that they were known for doing, or even buying and selling in the marketplace, everything was closed down. You couldn't do nothing that day because this was the Lord's day. Now, let's say if there were works to be done, such as, meditating, getting people back into the word, or teaching people about God's laws and putting it in their hearts, that was something people could do. Break bread, nothing wrong with that. But working physically on that day, like on farms, agricultural standards and things like that, that had to be left alone. The Sabbath was a sign and a wonder for the Israelites because it was specifically a sign that represented that these were the people of God, of whom God had chosen for his own. So people of other nations knew those people right there, those are YHWH's people. Those are Yahweh's people. You don't mess with them, because those are the people that did the Sabbath. Now, if we go further into the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, there is a different mark that is spoken of, and that is the mark of God. Now, one may wonder, well, what is the mark of God? The mark of God is spoken of as like this: to keep the Most High's words in the frontlet of your eyes and in the palm of your right hand. Now, it was described as being a form of a mark, this remembrance. If you look at, for instance, in Judaism, especially rabbinical Judaism, there's this, you could say, cube that contains like this little, I guess you could say like parchment, but it contains this little itty bitty scroll, and it has the actual 10 Commandments, scribbled on there in Hebrew. And the Jews actually have it wrapped around their heads when they're meditating in their synagogues. And they have it wrapped in their forehead, right here on their foreheads. You can look it up. And they also have it on the right palm of their hands. They took that scripture literally, to remember the Most High's commandments in the frontlet of your eyes and the palm of your hand, as a sign, as a mark, as a branding, as the Hebraic definition of the word mark would imply. So, when you go back to Revelations chapter 7, you see this discussion about the mark of the beast. And a lot of people take the mark of the beast to be like the RFID chip. It's this physical mark that one must not take. Otherwise, they're going to be branded by Hashatan himself, right? And by the people who follow Hashatan. But here's the problem with that. Even if one were to reject the mark, has one changed their hearts? So let me be more specific. If you were a person who has been known for, let's say, murdering people, but let's say you believe in the Bible and you believe what it says in Revelation 7 about there being a mark of the beast, and someone told you that the mark of the beast is the RFID chip. If you were a person that just didn't believe in taking the RFID chip, but yet you were still going around murdering people, are you still of God? And I want that question to simmer in your mind when you think about the hypothetical. Is a murderer who continues to murder despite rejecting the RFID chip, are they still of God? Could one who is of God dare say that the person who continues to murder yet rejects the beast, the mark of the beast, is of God? There's no way. Because even in the book of Revelations, one of the very groups that Yeshua said he was going to judge harshly were the murderers. Outside of the drunkards and the liars and the homosexuals and everyone else, right? They are a part of that list of sinners that were spoken of, the same sins that are spoken of back in the Old Testament, nothing new. Yeshua said he was going to judge harshly. So it could not possibly be that the mark of the beast could be something physical. This has to be something spiritual to the soul. Something so deep within that we have to stray away from it. Something that is so dogmatic within us, we have to unlearn it and deprogram it from ourselves so that we can come back to the Creator. And everyone who knows of the scriptures, who does not just look at it as a novel, but they actually read it, what does the Bible always emphasize about people who follow the Creator? When Yeshua said that, what did Yeshua say the two greatest commandments were? He said the two greatest commandments were to who? Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your fellow man. Right? Am I wrong? And that these two commandments encompassed and fulfilled everything that was in the law. Now, mind you, love in itself is not a commandment. Love is an action that fulfills the 10 commandments. A lot of people don't realize that. People thought Yeshua took away the law. No, he didn't take away the law. He said love fulfills the law. There's a difference. And people miss that. The 10 commandments always mattered. That's what determined whether if one loved their man, their fellow man, and their God. So if one did not have that, and yet the mark of the beast is something that is supposed to be physical, well, what about the spiritual part of the man? Is he not marked by what he does? See, let me explain it to you. Let me bring it all together because I don't want you all to get confused by my passion. The mark of God is a representation of one's actions. It's not merely a physical mark. See, again, it's Gentile hogwash because everything gets mystified. Everything is always something physical, something arbitrary, something that you have to just resist before the demons somehow take you over and you just completely go against God. That's not what this is. Man has to decide by his own volition whether if he wants to obey Yah's word, keep God's commandments, those 10 commandments, or if he wants to go against it and he wants to follow the ways of the world. If the mark of God, let me ask you this question. If the mark of God is to keep Yah's word and remember Yah's word in both your mind, the frontlet of your eyes, and the palm of your hands, which is supposed to be a representation of action, a representation of your works. That's what the hand represents. So when you understand that, now you bring it back to Revelation 7. The mark of the beast is supposed to be marked 666. It's 3 numbers. And those 3 numbers are supposed to be marked hypothetically on people who follow the name of the beast. Just like for people who follow the commandments of God, YHWH, guess what? They have the name of YHWH on them because they follow the commandments that YHWH prescribed to them. People who follow the ways of the world, they have what? The name of the beast and his number. And what is his number? 666. What is the number of God? 777. What is 7? What does 7 equal? Completion. What is completion? Perfection. What is perfection? Wholeheartedness. Wholeheartedness to what? To God's word. What separated God's people from everyone else? His commandments. It's that simple. That's all it is. That's all it has ever been from beginning to end, the scriptures. Righteousness. His commandments are a light to thine feet. That's all this whole thing has been about. It's not the RFID chip. Although I wouldn't recommend people take the RFID chip now. So let me put that out there. Not recommending you all to do that. What I'm saying is this, and hear me well. For that part alone, the commandments, when one does them, is the hand. The commandments, when one remembers them, is the mind, your wisdom, your acknowledgement thereof. When one follows the ways of man or the ways of the world, the ways of the beast, right? Like when you look at the world itself, the carnal people, the people that do whatever they want, do what thou will. Those people are marked by the beast. Those people do not follow God. And most people that say that they follow God, they don't follow him. Most people that say that they're blessed by God, they're not blessed by him. They have physical carnal blessings, but they have a very reprobate mind. Their minds do not follow God. They do not speak up for God. They speak against him because they support the things that man does wrong. They will not call their brother evil. They will call him good even when he does evil. And I can name quite a few people on hand who we can see. They don't have the mark of God because their actions don't represent it. Now, a lot of you could be saying, well, Malik, now you're judging because you don't know these people. No, but I know their actions. What did Yeshua say? You will know a man by his what? His fruit. You will know a tree by its what? Its fruit. How could Yeshua have cursed the fig tree if the fig tree didn't have fruit? You can't determine the good or the bad of nature unless it exudes some kind of symptom. When you think of good and bad are representations of what? Function and dysfunction. If something is not good, it's considered ra. Ra, which means evil in the Hebrew. And good is tov, which is a representation of function. I have a fan right here blowing against me right now because it's hot as hell. If this fan stopped blowing, this to me is going to be considered ra because it's dysfunctional and the damn thing is malfunctioning. We got a problem. I don't like it. So it's evil to me in that sense, though, right? The point I'm attempting to bolster is this, ladies and gentlemen. The mark of which is being talked about is the ways of this world. We see the things that are happening all around us. This is the nature of the beast. And this is why you always see me, I'm very, you could say, serene when I see the way people act. It does anger me. But it's a kind of anger that is calm because I know what's coming. I see what's coming. I'm not predicting anything. I can just tell by the symptoms that are happening. Things are happening. Man doesn't realize it, but they're fulfilling a lot of prophetic events right now. Prophetic situations. What those situations may be, no one ever knows. But we see it all the time. Families are being divided. Political leaders are getting corrupt. Governments are becoming more corrupt. More governments are trying to come in and corrupt other nations. All kinds of stuff is happening. Economies are wearing down. Prices for food and water are going up, and even gas, are going up. Its own people are divided. A house divided cannot stand. All these things are coming to fruition. Things of which happen all the time in kingdoms. But this kingdom here and everybody around it, they're crumbling, and it's getting worse. People who are marked by God, that do what God wills them to do, who keep the commandments, who show that they love God as much as they love themselves, and they love they love God as much as they love themselves, and they love their neighbors as much as they love themselves. And they fulfill the 10 by doing those things: not stealing, not killing, not coveting what people have, keeping the Sabbath, not worshiping other gods before YHWH. Those 10 doing that fulfills what is what Yah is looking for. And that's what marks you. And a lot of people don't even realize it. Yah judges the people every day. People don't even realize it. You wonder why people are dying? He's judging you. And then you got all these different people, especially black people, that say, "Oh, you ain't supposed to be judge. Who made you judge and jury? Only God can judge me. Only God knows my heart." But God is judging you every day. You don't even read your Bible. He judges you every day. He judges you every day. Literally says in scripture, Yah judges man's ways every day. They don't even know it. They don't even know it. And I just sit up there and I have to laugh and look at them. I'm like, yeah, you keep on saying that. When your fellow man is trying to tell you there's a cliff right there, but you don't want to listen because you say I'm judging you, or because I don't have all the information on you, yet you're showing me who you are by your actions, by your fruits. You're showing me who you are. I don't have to know you. I can look at what you're doing, and this is what you want to show me. This is the sickness that you exude. Why do I have to know cancer to see what cancer, the damage that cancer does? If I see it, I can then give a diagnostic. If I see a broken engine, I don't have to know that broken engine story. What the hell kind of shit is that? If I'm a mechanic and I see that the engine is broken, clearly it needs to be fixed. That's the judgment that I give. I'm not telling you you're going to go to heaven or hell. I'm warning you that this is what is happening. But the world of which we live in says, you're not supposed to judge. You're a human. We got human judges. What are y'all talking about? People judge every day. To judge is to literally evaluate what is right or wrong based off of a moral compass. That is it. Even biblically, that's what that is. But a lot of people don't even know that, because they take one story out of the Bible and then they mess it up. Because Yeshua said that he who has not sinned cast the first stone, and people didn't even look at the situation. But again, that's what happens when pastors teach you a bunch of hogwash about the Bible, because they take the culture out. And when you take the cultural paradigm out, people interpret the Bible how they want to interpret it. They don't base it off of what the people were trying to tell the audience. It's that simple. But the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, if you keep Yah's commandments, if you do what you're supposed to do, if you mature and do better, Yah judges you based off that. He quantifies you based off of that. No, the laws cannot save you. No, the laws cannot make you enter the kingdom of heaven. It is up to Yah's grace to do that. But Yah does determine whether if you are obedient based off of the rules of which he prescribed to you, and then some that comes after that. And if you follow the ways of man and accept their ways and enable what they do, that's the mark of the beast. And as far as the buying and selling goes, well, that's all based off of the fact that if you take into account the things that people could do to you, right? So I like to compare it to the the war between the Maccabean revolt, right? And I'm just going to make it a long story short on this aspect. I know this video is going on like 40 minutes, but bear with me, right? Look at the story of the Greeks and the Jews. Antiochus Epiphanes IV was a general of the Greek army. They conquered Jerusalem at some point during I want to say either the second, I think it was the Second Temple period, right? The building of the Second Temple, Jerusalem was conquered by the Greeks, specifically Antiochus Epiphanes IV. He went to war with them. When he won, he was an antichrist. He was the epitome of an antichrist. And mind you, antichrist existed prior to what was spoken of in Revelations about this ultimate antichrist, right? But there were many antichrists that came prior to him. This antichrist will be no different, because he will do everything in his power to prevent God's people from being able to do the things that they want to do with the worship of the Creator, right? And those who are followers of Yeshua. But the bottom line to it is this. Antiochus Epiphanes did a lot of things that was sacrosanct. I mean, not sacrosanct. That was desecrating the sanctity of the Jews' belief systems. For instance, he ended up desecrating the Second Temple with the blood of swine. And we know that swines were considered unclean animals during the oblation sacrifice, the oblations of which the Israelites sacrificed as forms of forgiveness back in the day. We also know that during that time, he built latrines, or what we would call modern day toilets. And basically, it had fecal matter and everything else in it inside of the Second Temple. He did that as well. So he desecrated the temple in both of those ways. So, you know, he had blood everywhere on the temple, smeared on the temple. He had latrine built in the temple. In addition to that, he created laws where the Jews could not observe the Sabbath, the mark of which determined who was a Jew, who followed the commandments that the Most High had prescribed, that made Israel who they were. He literally made it a law that they could not fight against that. I mean, that they could not worship the YHWH in that way. They had to be Hellenized and converted into Greeks. And some Jews gave up their religions in order to go to the Greek religion. And Judas Maccabees was so angry, he went and had a revolt against Antiochus Epiphanes, because Antiochus Epiphanes was taking away everything that the Jews ever worshipped. And finally, they won against Antiochus. And thus came the story of Hanukkah. That would have been the mark of the beast, for instance, when Antiochus Epiphanes came along and he created laws that prevented the Jews from being able to do the things that they wanted to do. And similar to what happened then, it's going to happen again. There's going to be an antichrist that comes along. He's going to try to make he's going to make God's chosen ones, whether they're Gentiles or Israelites, indifference. He is going to try to make an attempt to undermine their belief system. He's going to create laws, or the powers that be are going to create laws that makes it harder for God's people to worship the Creator. Right? But those who are marked by the beast, they will not have to experience all of this. People who are not marked by the beast, people who do follow God's laws and commandments, they're going to be hindered from doing those things, or at least try to. But so long as God's people are steadfast and they hold strong, God will provide them wisdom on how to combat this issue at hand. Where the buying and selling comes in at is that there will be implementations. Some would argue the RFID chip. In and of itself, this is not a mark of the beast, but it could be a tactic of the beast that prevents you from being able to worship the God of Israel as properly as you would have liked. That's basically all that is. Now, again, I do not recommend you all to take the chip. If you so choose, that's on you. But I wouldn't recommend it, because I wouldn't want some electronic device inside of my skin anyway. Anything could happen. Anything could happen. And I don't want to be some sort of transhumanist that somehow ends up becoming some kind of, robotic entity of the government because, well, in order for me to buy and sell, in order for me to utilize digital currency, I have to do it via a microchip. I don't believe in that. I'd rather die than to do that. So, but that's just me. And that's just an extreme worst case scenario. Not to say it's going to happen, but that's the situation. And that concludes my video on the mark of God versus the mark of the beast. Ladies and gentlemen, I enjoyed this episode. It's one of my favorite episodes. I hope you all enjoyed it. I will provide references of the scriptures that I utilize so that you guys can go back and read them for yourselves. You all have a good day or good night wherever you reside, and I thank you for listening if you got this far. You all have a good night, and with this I say peace.